Raise your hands if you've got personal photographs of memorable moments of your life. A beautiful wedding, a fun birthday, or that last trip you took away. We take these pictures of our lives because they carry so much meaning and they remind us of how special our lives is and how much context there really is. But how many here have got photographs of yourselves at work working? Not pictures of yourselves at a work party or function, no, actually at work, engaging with a customer, sitting in a creative meeting, or signing off on that next big project. Probably not so many. And yet we spend the majority of our time and energy working to attain a better and more meaningful life, but hardly keep a visual record of it. Imagine you had photos of your first day at work, pictures of a memorable meeting, a moment of focus and intent, pictures of your business growing, or even pictures of your business having to close its doors. Or imagine starting your own business and investing everything that you had, your blood, sweat, and tears, to build it. Imagine you had someone to document that journey for you, to capture those vital moments that you could not, well, because you were, hopefully, too busy working. I love storytelling. I am a curious observer of behaviors and rituals, and I'm fascinated by witnessing a process unfold. And so I was wondering, why don't we document those long journeys and rituals of our professional lives? I had the privilege of photographing some of the working years of an artist, Paul du Toit, my mentor and friend. Paul passed away a few years into our friendship, but I got to document those lasting working years of his life, and those pictures will live on forever, hold his legacy, and show an aspect of his life that otherwise would have never been seen. And that's why I started doing what I do, because I found that it's these aspects of our life that are worth documenting. So 8 years ago, I embarked on this idea. After a career in digital media, I stepped away from it all and took a leap of faith. I gathered all my experiences from my work and the insights from my studies in anthropology, journalism, and depth psychology, and I married them to my core passion, photography. Creating something new, a methodology that would allow to observe as well as visually document the processes of companies. And photography has this innate ability to capture raw emotions. Photography can tell stories that go far beyond words, and it has the power to give and shift perspectives. Photographs contain the humanity of the moment, and that's what I set out to capture. So I had to go out and find those organizations and people that were at the very beginning of their journey. And I soon found inspiring and forward-thinking entrepreneurs that saw the value and the power of this idea to keep a visual record of their new company's journey. And so these projects ranged from documenting the design and construction of Africa's first circus academy. I documented the journey from beginning till very end of a health technology startup, and I started documenting the journey of a market-challenging fintech startup called Yoco that is still documented today, nearly 8 years later. I had to immerse myself into the day-to-day operation, and I was entrusted with a free pass to sit in, watch, listen, and observe what was happening whilst capturing those vital moments. I was an objective observer in the room. I was the fly on their wall. Now, that wasn't always easy, because companies are not always familiar with having an outsider sit in the organization. Imagine a photographer sitting in your finance meeting. So I had to carefully and quietly immerse myself into these environments. Decide when and how to take the picture without disturbing the moment. What camera to use when. And so over time, I started building out this methodology that allowed the camera and myself to slowly become as good as invisible. It might sound boring, photographing a finance meeting, but no conversation around money and budgets, especially in a startup, does not get animated, does not bring out people's personalities and highlight the emotion and the connection and the engagement of the moment. And that's what I saw worth capturing. I remember also photographing a young CEO. He was about to embark on a really important phone call with a huge international organization. This was going to be the first potential big deal for the startup. And so I sat in the room with him from a distance, observing. He was nervously taking down notes and doodling. At one point, he was walking up and down his office with his laptop in his hand. And then he sat back down again, and I saw these little pools of sweat appearing on his forehead as he dialed that number. We don't often get to see what the world of a CEO looks like behind closed doors. But yet these are the moments, these are the stories that are worth capturing because they bring a sense of proportion and humanity within an organization and offer a sense of honest transparency. So it's these kind of stories that are brought back to organizations in the form of photographic essays, creating large image banks, and these stories which range from documenting the day in the life of a company to documenting the testing of a new prototype. Then there were images of daily stretching routines at the office. There were moments of colleagues cutting each other's hair during lunchtime. And then there were moments of really difficult conversations before hard decisions. But I realized I was documenting daily rituals and behaviors. There were also moments of utter exhaustion. And then there were moments of pure, delightful joy, always captured in situ and authentically. And so I realized the power of authentic visual storytelling within an organization. And I could have never anticipated where that might lead to. It carved out an entire new career, never mind standing on this very stage today sharing it with you. But I also realized by documenting this kind of work, how much meaning and purpose there is. And the people I was doing this for, they recognized this too. For the people in the pictures, these stories started building pride. You see, I was documenting the ordinary. But by documenting the ordinary, it becomes meaningful. People realized how meaningful their work really was, no matter how ordinary it might have seemed before. This also built empathy. People, teams, and tribes, they got to see themselves in relation to each other and their work. And colleagues shared with me that by being witness to these stories, they not only felt closer to each other and their colleagues, they felt more connected to the organization, the product, and the customer themselves. And one manager also shared with me that through being exposed to the realities of each person in the organization, he started understanding how important everyone is. And that, he said, made him a more compassionate leader. So as these companies started witnessing themselves through these photo stories, it was as if a mirror was held up to them. The pictures reminded them of where they came from, but what they were capable of doing. And no matter what route these organizations would take, the moments in the journey would always hold the value. And as an observer, I was then also able to feed back the things I was noticing into the organization. I became a trusted member and advisor to the teams. You see, as an objective outside observer, I was able to look in and identify and highlight blind spots that the people on the ground couldn't see so easily. And one founder reminded me how important that was for him, because that kind of feedback gave him a different perspective on a situation, and that allowed him to make a bigger and better decision. And so these stories over time became bigger than themselves. They started representing the ethos, the value system of each organization as it was lived into in the very moment, going far beyond just some words on a piece of paper. And since the value system is at the core of any culture, well, my anthropological mind was activated. I realized that this was not only about capturing some key moments for a company, this in essence was capturing company culture and creating a lasting memory bank of it. You see, culture is a collective narrative told over time. It's the human story that has always mattered to us. That's why we've been documenting it for millennia. So instead of venturing out to Papua New Guinea, immersing myself into a tribe and studying it as a traditional anthropologist would, I went out and I found and sought interesting tribes and cultures in the form of startup companies. And let me tell you that these can seem quite colorful and exotic too. And instead of a traditional approach of studying an exotic culture far away to bring its stories to the other side of the world, this approach brings the story straight back to the culture observed, to serve it first. I was practicing visual anthropology by capturing work culture, but also reflecting it back, and by doing so, creating awareness and understanding within the organization. And this can be really powerful. By capturing a work culture and reflecting it back, it ultimately becomes codified. This allows it to have longevity. It can be transferred over time. For companies to scale, these visual records give access to perspective, context, reference points. And these visual records start becoming valuable pieces of intellectual property, and their value multiplies. The longer you tell the journey, the deeper and richer it becomes. And so for customers, for prospective future employees, or even investors, they get to get a glimpse of what's under the hood of this organization, offering real transparency. And the outside world gets to see what an African startup looks like. And these are stories we really need to share more. One of the companies I documented raised its first round of funding. And during the due diligence process, the investor took me aside and shared with me that whilst on paper, the company looked highly investable, it ticked all the right boxes. It was through the transparency and insight of the photographic stories that gave them that extra confidence that this company was led by a strong culture and a dynamic team of people. And this is the moment I realized that the value transcended the photograph itself. By keeping a record and capturing these cultures and reflecting them back, you can ultimately bring back an acute awareness into your organization. And this is where I see the idea start growing its wings. A visual record, documented and reflected back, can help you build a hyper-aware company, or what I call a conscious organization. One that is self-aware and always open to learn and build from its successes and failures. And this is really where the idea starts focusing its attention more inward. You see, I've learned that real transformation happens when we point that lens inward and we can act from a place of honest self-reflection. What would it feel like for your personal photo albums to be completed? Not just with the stories of your personal life, but also the journeys of your career, including the achievements and challenges whilst helping to build these businesses. We've got so many stories of African startups, of your companies, of your work that need to be told. Start telling them. Start documenting them. With this in mind, I advocate for companies to become more aware, to share their knowledge and stories, but to also showcase their work and commitment. By doing so, you will build scalable human-centric cultures that provide meaningful experiences and promote growth. And for that, you need someone from the outside to hold up that mirror, or in this case, a camera.